In this video, I want to cover the 8 key factors that, if you're looking to sell your home, will help you potentially get the most bang for your buck and also avoid any hoops jumping through the transaction. So, if you're really thinking about selling your home, what are some of the top features that you should look at? And by features, I mean more so repairs or maintenance issues and items that you should be looking at to make sure that you get top market value with as little much of a headache from the buy side as you can possibly receive through the inspection period. We're going to dive into that. And number one, and this one's going to sound alarming, but number one is going to be your curb appeal or exterior look. Now, what does this mean from a seller standpoint? What do I need to do? Like, that's what we get asked all the time. And the big things are your peeling paint or rotting trim. So, a lot of homes were built without aluminum soffit or fascia, as well as windows. And a lot of this stuff, depending on even the loan structure, would dictate that this either has to be A, repaired and fixed, which could be very costly, or B, you're going to cover it up with aluminum anyway. So, what do we recommend? Paint it to begin with. That way, you're not actually doing a large expense. Secondly, anything that's loose or crooked on the outside of the house. If your gutters are sagging, yes, they're supposed to have a negative grade. But if there's a sag in the gutter, if your house numbers are a simple one, if they're crooked on the house or your mailbox hangs on the house and it's crooked, think of how easy that is to fix. But think of the eye that it catches if it's not fixed. Loose shutters, that's a big one. Another one, cracks in your concrete, whether it's your steps, your driveway, whatever the case may be, at least recaulk it and seal it. Next, how many times have you walked up to a property and the railings to the porch or deck are wobbly? That's an easy fix most of the time. Secondly, dirty siding or spider web. Some of us do leave the Halloween decorations all year long. Not going to say anything, but get rid of them. Make it look like you're trying to sell it. If you've got algae growing on your roof, wash it off. Anything of that nature. Also, if you're going into a new season, typically you're going to know if you have dead or dying landscape. That is a huge turnoff for buyers. All they see is dollar signs the minute they move into the property. If any of these things can be seen from the outside and or the pictures that are online, imagine the emotional viewing that the client gets before they ever step foot inside what could be a perfect home for them, but they're completely turned off emotionally from the way that the exterior looks. The second item to consider, which I kind of touched base on in the first one with the exterior, is the roof, the gutters, and believe it or not, the drainage. I bring all this up and I'll give a prime example. We just sold new construction. And the drainage was actually a problem on new construction because when they were building the house, a piece of equipment put a rut before the sod was laid. We just so happened to tour the property and there was a pond going from the front yard to backyard where the said piece of equipment drove. But the next thing I want to touch base on is the roof and gutters. And these are big ticket items. The gutters, not so much, but the roof for sure. So if you're missing shingles, you have curled shingles, or you can physically see damage from the ground. I'm also going to tell you, if the buyer has a home inspection, I hope their inspector is climbing on the roof or at a minimum getting drone footage of what the roof looks like. This could be a big ticket item for a buyer as well as a seller, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be something that either A, has to be negotiated, or B, it's going to turn the buyer off entirely due to the price to repair these items. Now, you might be asking yourself, why does the roof matter so much? It's on there. It's doing its job. Well, I'm going to tell you why it matters so much. It matters so much now in today's world for lenders as well as insurance companies. A lot of insurance companies are either A, not insuring the property, or if they are and it's damaged or older, the insurance premiums are that much higher. What does this do? It actually kills the deal because it costs the buyer either so much in residual holdings or the initial purchase of a new roof. So this is definitely one to pay attention to. So, number three, it's a very large item, but this one item can affect a lot of different areas of the house, and that's the foundation. Within the foundation, the main things to look for are cracks. Those are obvious. But with those cracks, what happens? Well, you can get a musty smell in the basement due to water penetration. Two, you can get doors that don't latch or open correctly because of the settling of the foundation. All of these things send a red flag to a buyer. And realistically, they ask themselves, is this going to be a solid home for my family? Or is this a money pit that I won't be able to afford? So, item number four on my list is going to be electrical. What about the electrical is so important? Well, I'm glad you asked. In your electrical system, there is a lot of things that could be red flags to a buyer that are a quick red flag, even if they don't know necessarily what they're looking for. One of these is most common exposed wiring or hanging out of the junction boxes in the basement or attic space. Now, I know most of you as a buyer are not going to be walking through the attic, or should I say, climbing and crawling in. But from a seller standpoint, and that's what this video is tailored for, is you don't want exposed wiring or open junction boxes. That is a quick red flag for the buyer as well as an appraiser. Secondly, outlets that don't work or outlets that are loose inside of the wall. You, as the seller, know what outlets these are and where they're located at through the home. Another big one that I personally run into very often is GFIs in the kitchen, the bath, the garage, and the exterior. Check your code for where you live, but most commonly, this is going to be flat across the board. It's to prevent electrical shock or exposure to shock in any place where you could have moisture. The next big thing is an older panel. There's some companies out there that are no longer manufacturing due to fire issues, but knowing what those companies are, again, this can make or break a deal. And for you to catch it beforehand, you're more apt to be able to negotiate or look for bids versus somebody that knows that you have to have this fixed in order to sell the home, aka taking advantage of the situation and raising the price. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is common, is flickering lights in a property. And most of the time, it's due to a potential wire shortage, which is also going to cause warm wire in the walls or outlet, but also it could be as simple as replacing a switch or even just changing a light bulb. Now, what does this tell a buyer? Well, it tells the buyer to ask the questions. Is this property safe for my family? Am I going to be able to get insurance? And the one thing I didn't mention about electrical is if the home is old enough, it could have knob and tube electrical in it. Now, the other thing most people don't understand or realize about electrical work, or electrical components, I should say, is that the average life expectancy prior to new copper wiring is only 50 to 75 years of age. With that being said, if you are buying a home that was built 1950, potentially to 1970 or before, even if the property has been updated, it could be an update. I'm not going to say requirement, but suggestion to look into an electrical upgrade for the property. You've made it halfway through this riveting video of what to take into consideration when selling your house with a preemptive strategy on what to repair before even listing. If you're finding this content educational or beneficial, I would love for you to click the like button as well as the subscribe, as we deliver information to you on a weekly basis that could very well help you sell, or on the flip side, you buy after you're sold. Item number 5 is your water line system, whatever you want to call it, your plumbing. What are the key things to look for as a home seller that is going to help you move forward? And again, this comes back to, you already live in the house. I promise you already know where the problems are. Problems. Do you have a leaky faucet? Do you have a toilet that will refill on occasions because it's running and you don't know there's a leak? Better question. Do you know of water stains on the ceiling or potentially rotting cabinets in your kitchen or bath because of a previous leak or an active leak? Now, here in Iowa, we just passed a new disclosure, which brings me to the next piece, and that's going to be galvanized or lead or polybutylene plumbing. What is this? These are items that have to be disclosed to a buyer so that they're made aware of what material is in the property. These all can pertain safety and or health risks to you as the individual when you buy your next home. So something to take into consideration when selling now that this is being brought to light. And last but not least, your water heater. Your water heater has a typical life expectancy of 8 to 12 years. I would hate to think how many properties I've walked into that has a 20-year old water heater. Now, what does this do? Does it really mean that it's not efficient? Well, that's up for debate. But the main thing it does is most people never drain their water heater. With that being said, over the years, your water heater accumulates sludge and everything else inside of the tank. So at some point in time, you might have had a 50-gallon water heater, but all of a sudden you've realized over the years, and not all of a sudden, but over the years, you've realized that you no longer get that 45 minutes to an hour shower. Now you might only get 15 to 20 minutes of hot water, and it's because there's no space left in the tank because you have sediment and sludge inside. It's time to upgrade. It's always cheaper to upgrade when you want to versus when you have to. The big thing that this does for the buyer side is water damage is sneaky as well as expensive. A lot of people try to cover up water damage with paint. What happens after you sell the home and the water damage comes back and it's found to be something that you already knew about? Well, there is a law in Iowa for a time frame that the buyer can come back on you, the seller, for repairs on a property. So educate yourself in that manner to avoid a potential lawsuit when it comes to pre-existing conditions. So item number 6 that I want you to think about is your HVAC system. So heating and cooling. If you include HVAC, that's also your ductwork. But one of the big things that people fail to do when listing their home, and it could even be on a regular maintenance schedule, in my personal opinion, is a dirty filter. Now, it might seem like something tiny, but here's the thing. If the filter's dirty and when they pull it out, it looks like it hasn't been changed in forever, two things. One, what really is the quality of the HVAC system if it's been neglected? And two, how dirty is my ductwork with all of the dust that's already gathered in the filter? These could be easily fixed with a $5 purchase once a month for an air filter. Next, noisy or rattling ductwork or pipes when they kick on. That's huge because every buyer is going to have, I hope, an inspector come and check the bare essentials. Now, most inspectors are not plumbing, electrical, or HVAC certified, so it's going to be a vague inspection. But I promise you, anybody, if a pipe is rattling, is going to notate that there is an issue somewhere. And what this could do is cause you additional headache, heartache, and expense in order to get your property sold. Next, thermostat. I would hate to think how many times I've walked into a property that's for sale and it's always flashing that the batteries are low or dead. Just actually had this happen the other day, and a client called me because their furnace wasn't working. Well, I already knew that the property they moved into had newer mechanicals. So I made some quick suggestions, and come to find out it was as easy as changing 2 batteries and everything worked great. What did this do? Well, it educates you as the homeowner, but it allowed you to save a ton of money. And a thermostat at the end of the day, unless you're doing Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all this fun jazz, even if you had to replace a thermostat, $50 or less. Next, service records on your mechanicals. I recommend every year you get your furnace inspected and you get your AC inspected for multiple reasons. These inspections typically run here in Iowa anywhere from $150 to $250, depending on the company you use and what warranty or backing they put behind it. What does that do? Well, essentially, by the time you include that cost versus your energy costs, it's not really going to save you any money. But what it can do is save the longevity of your equipment. And what it also does is it shows the next buyer that you took the initiative and you were proud of your property and took care of it with maintenance and scheduled regular maintenance on top of that. The other big thing, and this is huge, especially if you have an older furnace that is not high efficiency, you're typically going to get rust inside of the cabinet of the furnace. And that is due to condensation or moisture coming back down through the exhaust pipe all the way from the roof. But that's a big red flag. If I have rust inside of an electrical component area, what other issues could come up? Now, why is this such a big deal to buyers? Is because your furnace and AC outside of the roof is typically the most expensive item that any homeowner will ever replace. Lucky number 7. 7. We're lucky right now. Number 7 is going to be in your kitchens and bathrooms. And these are pretty simple items, but it comes back to one question. Is this home truly move-in ready? Or am I going to have to feel like a weekend warrior and do small projects around the house? And this is as easy as loose handles or broken drawers. It could be hinges. It could be anything simple, and it requires minimal tools. A bigger one is going to be cracked tile or grout missing or potentially molding caulk. And the caulk in your bathtub is typically where the mold's going to be, or it's going to be at the top of your backsplash. Easy fixes. Again, all of these are probably outside of cracked tile. These are probably going to be less than $10 for you to take care of this stuff. A leaky sink or outdated faucets and or poor quality of lighting. So you may have updated the house, but did you spend the extra $150 on a new light fixture in the kitchen? A lot of people don't. Do you know how many people will pull their eye from a brand new kitchen to see a 20-year-old light fixture that doesn't fit the area? It's huge. Chips and stains or possibly even burns in the countertop, depending on what material it's made out of. This is a huge one because few people know how to fix this. And by fix this, I mean replace, because a countertop, for the most part, outside of a couple, can be fixed. But the next one's going to be broken fans. That's a big one. How many times do you go in and the pull chains are either missing or broken? These are all tiny fixes, but these are all big things. And this leads to the problem of being emotionally disconnected from that room because you know it takes repairs. So the bathroom and the kitchens are big traffic areas. The bathroom, not so much, but the kitchen for sure. That's where you gather. That's where you have your meals. That's where you do realistically probably 50% of what takes place in your household and or company. So this becomes a burden on the person that wants to entertain or have people over. And all these things could seriously be 1 or 2 weekends and get everything fixed. Well, we finally made it. Number 8. And this one's a big one for me because with my background, these are some of the things that I notice the easiest. And this comes back to interior finishes and functionality. And it really asks the question of how much work is hiding in the property that the common buyer won't see until either the inspection report or potentially once they close on the property. One of the biggest ones I have are nail pops, cracks in drywall, and or peeling paint. Why? Because even though paint's inexpensive, nobody likes to do it. They'll claim they do until they actually start and realize by the time they touch up, cut back, all this other stuff, and whoops, I accidentally touched the ceiling paint to the wall or vice versa, it's no longer fun. Secondly, how many times have you shut a door and it doesn't latch? And you're either pulling up or pushing down or pushing in on the handle to actually get it to latch inside the door. Or And this I don't see unless it's in older houses, but are squeaky hinges. And again, all these things are relatively easy, except for the paint side. Ugh, bad vibes there. Next, broken blinds, missing trim, or damaged flooring. This one's big. I would say on average, 20% of houses that I walk into has one of these things. I was just in one the other day that had all of these things, and the home was in move in condition. Well, this immediately turns a buyer off. Whether they're expensive or not, it really leads people to believe how much more neglect has there been throughout the house. One that doesn't necessarily catch my eye all that often. It does and it doesn't. So, transition strips between flooring types. I have a big pet peeve if there's more than two, potentially three types of flooring in the entire house. I hate it. Why couldn't you match floors everywhere? That's like I took on a project, this flooring was no longer made, so I picked something else, even though it doesn't match what's over here. I hate it. But secondly, a transition strip, whether it's from carpet to hardwoods or tile or LVP or whatever type of flooring you have down, always put a transition down. It gives a finished look, and you can buy them at your local hardware shop for probably $7 to $8 a piece. Lastly, closet doors. This one's huge. A lot of homes have the bifold or not accordion, but the bifold doors. And I'm going to tell you the bulk of these doors are not adjusted correctly in the track. They drag or they don't close completely or whatever the case is. Again, you could go back into the strike plate. You could go into all kinds of different things, but doors are a big deal to a lot of people. So these are the handful of things on the interior side that to me make tons and tons of sense to take care of. So, what is the actual brutal truth that comes to these small, potentially inexpensive repairs? You could spend $2,000 to $3,000 repairing the bulk of everything I just listed in this video, and the buyer is going to feel like you might have spent 10 to possibly 15,000 making these repairs. What does that do for the home value of your house? Everybody always wants a deal, but here's the thing. If your house is in good to great condition, what negotiations are left for the buyer? Is the home worth what you're asking for in its current condition? That's really what you have to ask. And in order to maintain and or get the top bang for your buck as a seller, these are areas of your home I recommend looking into, taking care of before you list. If you would like a free obligation, no commitment home walkthrough from myself, realtor perspective, to get the most bang for your buck here in central Iowa, all my information is linked down below. I'd love to sit down and chat with you and see what we could do in order to get you sold. We don't want you on the market. We want you sold and happy and moving forward.